Thank you for being here. I'm Stephanie Sandala, Programming and Outreach Specialist here at Library Link NJ. I'm so excited for this program about horror. Becky knows how excited I am. This is Horror Readers Advisory, how to help your scariest patrons. Now let me introduce Becky and Konrad. Becky Spratford is a librarian and New Jersey native, now living in Illinois. She runs the critically acclaimed RA training blog, RA for All, known for her horror column for Library Journal. Becky is also the author of the Reader's Advisory Guide to Horror, 3rd edition, which I highly recommend. She's also a proud member of the Horror Writers Association and is organizer of their annual Librarians Day. Konrad Stump is a local history associate for the Springfield Greene County Library in Missouri, where he coordinates the library's popular Oh, the Horror series and created the Donuts and Death Horror Group, which sounds amazing, by the way.
It's pretty great.
Also the Horror Writers Association Library Committee co-chair and coordinates StokerCon's Librarians Day and Horror Writers Association's Summer Scares program. And now Becky and Konrad, please take it away.
Thank you. Hi, Konrad.
Hello,
Konrad.
Becky. Hi, everyone.
I'm going to start the slides in a second, but as Stephanie said, with our bios, Konrad and I are the Horror Writers Association co-chairs of the Library Committee. And we're going to talk about that a lot and what we do. The way this is going to go is I'm going to go first and talk about the basics of Horror Readers Advisory. I'm going to have a lot more on the screen than I'm going to actually be able to talk about. And let me get that up. And Stephanie's going to share these slides with you. So don't worry. And then Konrad's going to take it away, and he's going to have a chance to talk to you about how to promote. So things you need to know throughout the presentation, it'll be at the end. Libraries@horror.org. You want to reach both of us? Libraries@horror.org. It doesn't get much easier than that. Also, open your chat because I'm going to ask you to participate in just a moment. The other thing, if you like to use Twitter, we'd use the hashtag horror for libraries to talk about horror and horror books and all those fun things. So here we go with the chat. I'm going to do a poll, but we decided not to do a poll per se, just because we don't want to mess it up. So here is what I would like from you. For you specifically, horror is, give me a number, a favorite genre. It's okay. I don't like reading it myself, but I know how to help those who enjoy. I'm barely holding it together, simply participating in this presentation, and I may run away at fear in any moment. I love this. We have every number so far.
Yeah, it's exciting. Lots of ones, yeah.
No threes though, Konrad.
No threes.
Yeah. So either
they're out there,
or they're scared. Yeah. So what this presentation is for, it's targeted to those 4s, quite honestly. But the 3s are the ones who are gonna learn quite a bit today. What I would like to say though is, throughout this time, please use the chat. As I talk about things or Konrad talks about things, it would be great if you could add your own. But here's the scary truth about horror, and this is actually updated recently. If you click on any of the pictures or the links, by the way, they are filled throughout here. You can get so much more information. This is a study that was done with novelists, Library Journal, a whole bunch of other people. Which genres do you fear the most by, and novelist made me this graphic for my book. Which genres do you fear the most? And horror is number 4. But I want you to, not just that it's number 4, look at this, right? The first 6, the first 5, and then it really drops off. The first 4 are significantly ahead. This is a problem, and we understand this as we help libraries, and especially as we help all ages, which Konrad's going to focus on. I am going to focus more on helping your adult horror readers who are coming in. So I'd like to use this graphic because 1, you're not alone, you 4s, and you 1s need to understand, and 2s, that you are different than the average person walking in the library. So today you're going to pick a new genre to be scared of, I promise. I'm going to give you an overview of the genre right now, what you need to know. This is where I give my obligatory Stephen King message, and it's in my book as well. Look, I am not going to talk about Stephen King. Yes, he had a new book come out yesterday. Great. I love Stephen King. I have no problems with Stephen King. If I have to tell you about Stephen King, you have bigger problems than I can help you with. 90% of your libraries are getting Stephen King's books automatically on automatic buy. Or if you don't have an automatic buy program for top authors, you are adding him every time he has a new book. He's like James Patterson of horror, right? So I'm going to give you what you need to know, not what you should know. I'm going to spend time talking about the authors who are great right now. We are not going to talk about Shirley Jackson, and well, we're going to mention H.P. Lovecraft, but we're not going to talk about older authors. We're going to talk about resources and trends and what's going on right now. And then Konrad's going to flip the focus here and talk about featuring horror at your library, how you're going to test the waters with it to see what kind of what the audience is wants, and then how to just go for it, especially in October, but all year long. Okay, so now I'm going to go, and we're going to have plenty of time for questions. Feel free to ask them throughout. While I'm talking, Konrad will be in the chat, and while Konrad's talking, I'll be in the chat. So please feel free to interact there. What is horror? And this is the definition from my book, The Reader's Advisory Guide to Horror, 3rd edition. I'm going to read it just in the for accessibility, but also to focus on a few things here. Horror is a story in which the author manipulates the reader's emotions by introducing situations in which unexplainable phenomenon and unearthly creatures threaten the protagonists and provoke terror in the reader. And so we're going to really break this down. But the things I want to point out to you right now are manipulate the reader's emotions. One of the reasons a lot of people don't like horror is because they don't like being scared. The idea is, the reader's emotions are manipulated in horror, just like in romance. They're just different emotions, right? In romance, you're feeling love, you're feeling a love story, you're feeling good, you're feeling happy, there's a happy ending. It's all very satisfying. In horror, we're trying to scare you, okay? And another key, which I'm going to break down in more detail, unexplainable phenomenon and unearthly creatures. Again, the ad emotion is provoking terror. So there's a speculative element. Now I'm going to break that down. The bare minimum is that you must create a sense of dread and unease in the reader. Every reader will not always be scared by every book. There are books where I'm not scared, but I feel the unease throughout. Those are some of my favorites. A lot of people who don't read horror think that you have to have jump scares for it to be horror. You do not. And we're going to talk about this. Also, it must be speculative. Now, let me discuss this a little bit more. It can be scientific speculative, such as a zombie virus, which would be science fiction, or magic, such as a monster, a werewolf, something that isn't based in science, right? Or it can use both. Sometimes, for example, werewolves are a great example. Sometimes there's a scientific explanation for werewolfism. Jonathan Jans, who's an author I'll mention, he has a series called The Raven. I'm reading currently the 2nd book in that series called Blood Country. But The Raven is a science fiction apocalyptic story where basically a terrorist released some kind of virus that made all our latent genes that are in humans that made us be like vampires or werewolves or some kind of monster that had been suppressed by evolution have now come out. So that would be a combination of the two, right? And here's the other thing, because we're going to talk about what isn't horror. The speculative and scary thing must be the thing causing the dread and the fears and the chills. Which leads me to what is not horror. I want to have a caveat here. You are never going to argue with your patrons if they say these things on my list are horror. Oh, I love horror. What's your favorite horror book? Oh, the Sookie Stackhouse mysteries. I love horror. What's your favorite horror? Oh, Gillian Flynn, right? Psychological suspense. You're not going to argue with them. My key here about what is not horror is that you can't use the horror resources to help people who like these books. You need to use the resources that are for psychological suspense, supernatural thrillers, serial killers, all those stories. It doesn't mean that to the person coming in that they don't find it scary and horrific, but you have to be careful with the resources you're using. So the books we are talking about have speculative elements, provoke terror. So paranormal, in which quite often the speculative creature is the love interest, doesn't work for many horror fans. Again, serial killers and psychological suspense are all about the fear, the unease, the dread, worrying about what's coming next, stomach in knots, everything's real. This is important as we break down the appeal of horror in a few minutes, because why people like horror is sometimes to escape the real world, right? Supernatural thrillers are, it depends if they like the supernatural more than the thriller, you have to think about it. And this idea that just because something has zombies in it or any monster doesn't mean it's automatically horror. Here is an example. So we take zombies, right? Is someone who reads a zombie book a horror fan? Not always. Let's take The Walking Dead. And again, all of these graphics are from novelists, and they were used in my book with permission. The Walking Dead graphic novels, these are extremely popular with a wide range of readers. So here's an example of a reader who came in and said, I really like the Walking Dead graphic novels. I didn't know I liked zombies. In fact, talking to this reader, I realized she didn't actually like zombies. She liked the band of survivors in the story. That was this woman, it was a woman, this was her appeal, where she addressed the appeal of the story. And we're going to talk about themes versus appeal in a little bit, because it's important in horror. So she likes the band of survivors. Do we want to always give her a zombie book? Not if it wasn't the zombies that made her like it. And The Walking Dead's a great example because so many people came to horror through The Walking Dead, right? So if we look for band of survivors instead of zombies, instead of focusing on zombies, or even if we look back, zombie apocalypse, right? So here we have Shipbreaker, an award-winning teen book, which has very high appeal for adults, which is also a dystopian story with a band of survivors. But in this case, it's a climate change apocalypse. Different, but still very similar tone, very similar writing style. If you look at the other appeals, there's a lot that's similar, right? We have compelling, we have bleak, we have gruesome, we have compelling, bleak, suspenseful. This is all important. And then we could even give this person, and by the way, those are books this person actually did really like. So I'm using this as an example, right? So then we have Station 11, which is also a band of survivor stories, but which is more haunting, right? Not as compelling, or still compelling, is more haunting, not as gruesome, and suspenseful shares with the other two. So this is how we want to understand the nuance as we go forward, okay? So why do people love horror? People love horror because of how it makes them feel. It's really, and how it brings this way to take the unease of the real world, especially when we're talking about kids too, right? It's a way to battle the darkness in the world and sort of come out victorious, because in middle grade, we always come out victorious, not so much in adult. But it's best defined by Stephen King in his book, Dance Macabre, which all of you have in your nonfiction sections. So I would go take a look at that book where he talks about why people love horror. I'm going to talk a little bit about it myself. Some of it's derived from that. But one of the things I like to say, and it's a great mantra for those of you who are a little bit scared of helping horror readers, and this is in my book multiple times. I wanted to have it like 10 times, but they made me cut it out and I only have it like 3. Horror readers are not monsters. They just like to read about them. That's what you have to remind yourself. Look at me. You're going to meet Konrad too. We are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. We are not monsters, but we do love reading about them. Also, we want to not underestimate how much people love being scared. Fear is a primal, physical emotion that is built into all animals. Fear is something that comes with us in our DNA. We need fear to survive. Don't underestimate what that rush is when people get it. A lot of people say to me sometimes when I'm scared, I start giggling right after, because it's so connected in many ways to all these emotions that you can't help and control. It is an emotion, not just, the word horror can be used as an emotion. I'm horrified, right? I feel horrified. If you would like to learn a little bit more, this is a great podcast that I did at StokerCon a couple years ago in Grand Rapids with Stephen Graham Jones, Gabino Iglesias, and Catherine McGee, who's a horror scholar, on the Ladies of the Fright podcast. And you can go listen and learn a lot more about why horror matters and why it's appealing. Those of you who saw Stephen last month with me and Grady Hendrix and a few others, some of that he said, but he really talks very well about why horror is important. Now, when we're talking to readers, though, we have to remember horror is an emotion, right? When we're dealing with emotions, there are complications for helping people. Let's be really honest about that, okay? These are made up stories that are not realistic in any way, but they spark real feelings. Again, I have had a patron one time come in and return a book in a plastic bag. And I said, oh my goodness, is everything okay? Is the book ruined? She's like, book's fine. I had to periodically bury the book in my garden because it was scaring me too much and the freezer wasn't safe enough. So she put it in a plastic bag, she buried it, she would take it out and read it and then bury it again when she wasn't reading it because she couldn't even bear to look at it. And I was like, I'm sorry. And she said, no, it was awesome. Okay. It was awesome. She loved that about it. You have to understand though, that we are talking about people's emotions. How much they want to be scared is sort of like, again, romance, heat level. It's going to be hard to talk about how much scares you need. Now I'm going to have help them saying help you. So you want to assess their entry point and use a multifaceted approach. So we're going to talk about traditional appeal factors. We're going to talk about theme. We're going to talk about subgenre. We're going to talk about media. We're going to talk about scare or gore level. And these are the areas where we're going to actually talk to readers about horror. Okay. First of all, for those of you who don't really know what themes are, other people call them tropes, but this is a really basic. Appeal describes the feel of the book. All those things listed there. You're very used to them on Novelist and things like that. But appeal is specific to that book itself. Themes are a common story element that may pop up in many books. I'm going to have a list of themes from Novelist in a second. Theme is going to solely deal with plot elements, whereas appeal is about how the book is written. So you can kind of look at it as appeal as a way to get into why people like the book, and themes are a little bit about what happens to give you a sense. But together is how we can help readers the best. You saw a little bit of that in the slides about the zombie books, and you should go back and look at that and think about it. But let's talk about appeal factors first. And these are here in detail, so you can go back and think about them. The first one is the one that matters the most. And after that, they all sort of are things you can expect, but aren't necessarily, the importance level will change for people. But the first one is the most important. It's the toad and the moon. We're going to provoke terror. We're going to give voice to our fears. We're going to set that uneasy atmosphere from the start. How intense that tone and mood are something you're going to have to assess most importantly. And again, I have a resource for you. But horror also, because it's about emotions, we have to have characters we care about. You will have characters, this is not psychological suspense where, it's not Gone Girl where you hate everybody, but you still want to read. There will be characters you care about. There'll be characters you're rooting for. There will also be human characters in the very best horror that you also hate, that are monsters, not just the supernatural monster. And the pacing is not uniform, but it will start at one point and then steadily build to a frantic conclusion. And I dare anyone who starts the last third of a horror book to put it down for that last third, because that is where they get you. In terms of style and language, there's going to be a lot of adjectives, but it can be lyrical, but it's not going to be hard. They're going to be frank and colloquial adjectives to make you feel, taste, smell, see everything. Also, commonly, you often see quirky things like found footage, diaries, letters, documents, flashbacks, things that take you out of the story or add something that makes it a little more uneasy. And the flashbacks especially are really good to both heighten what's going on at the moment by going back to when a time when something's better, and then coming back to the frenetic moment. But also it's important because sometimes it's a break from the bad stuff that's going on as well. Common issues you're going to see in the storyline, there's going to be speculative elements, coming of age. Even if they're not young, you have to overcome something and become a better person. The stories are a safe way to explore the dark side of humanity, is to face your own fears, to escape life's real horrors. And for some, it validates a belief in the supernatural. Frame and setting can be anywhere and everywhere. So it used to be, it only could be like on an abandoned house somewhere, but it must enhance the dark tone and mood of the story. I like to use this beach house example. It's in my book, but very shortly, you can have a isolated island where a young woman escapes to find herself, and it's bright and sunshine, and there's a knock on the door, and it's the handsome caregiver of the property there to, see if everything's okay. Or you can have a woman who's frantically escaping an abusive relationship in the dark pouring rain, gets to that same house on that same island, is closing and locking all the doors and just finally feeling safe, and there's a knock on the door. Same setting, different tone and mood. Again, take some time and go back and look at these. I'm going through them quickly to give you a sense. This is a screenshot from Novelist of every single horror appeal. You can click through on this and get to all of their themes. Sorry, not appeals, themes. I'm not going to spend time looking at them now, but these are just a good idea for you, and they're used across age levels. Okay, Subgenres are not as clearly defined. That's another way to think about, sometimes themes cover that. And I want to show you an example of why sometimes subgenres are difficult. So here's Victor Laval, and here are 3 things that Victor Laval is doing. So these are 3 different books. Look at the different genres from one author. It's not so much that you can do one author anymore and have the same situation happening. So we have contemporary fantasy, horror, literary fiction. Okay, they all have horror. They also have contemporary fantasy, literary fiction. That's Changeling, Val Black Tom. Adaptations, which we're going to talk about, African American fiction, historical horror. That's also different. The Devil in Silver, African American fiction, horror, psychological suspense. It's not, if we say that historical horror is one subgenre and dark fantasy is another genre and psychological suspense is another genre, where do we put Victor Laval? It's hard. Okay, so how do we match people with books for media? Because I will tell you, it's extremely important to make sure we're thinking about matching people with books for a TV show, a movie, or a podcast. This is a really great conversation starter, a great way to bring people in who are not fans of the genre so that they can, you can say to them, first of all, if they come in and they're not fans themselves, you can start with, well, it's Halloween, I want to read something spooky, where should I start? And you say to them, oh, I can see, what do you watch on TV? What do you do? But it's also for you if you're not comfortable, because the resources, and I actually have that there under crowdsource the answers. If you like TV shows, and that is Stranger Things, I believe, it could be What We Do in the Shadows, or a movie, and that's Nope. So I think it's really important for you to understand that you can do this without knowing anything. And there are many, many resources. Novelist talks about media that's popular. You can do it for podcasts too. I didn't do the search for you, but you can just do it. Other libraries have lists, just Googling it. IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, especially Rotten Tomatoes, has so many things that you can use to find what movies people like and TV shows and why they like them. Don't be afraid to look at fans if you're not a fan yourself. And remember, new obsessions pop up all the time. There are new horror things every day. And then just the talk of adaptations makes some people super happy. You should also be making displays at your library, which Konrad's going to talk about, both virtually and physically, that show that that there's a popular TV show or a popular movie or a popular podcast that people want to look at. It just shows people that you're thinking about them. They may be more willing to come up and ask you a horror question, which, again, for those of you in the 4s, may scare you. Scare or gore level. You want to, again, treat it like a heat level for romance. It is not always clear, and there are some people who can't really articulate it. So we want to talk to them about, let them use words to explain to you what they want. But here's some resources to help you. Keywords and reviews are a huge help. So on the lower end, you'll see those terms like atmosphere, creepy, and gothic. If it's a little bit more in the middle, dread, unease, frightening, menacing, bleak. And then again, in the upper end, intense, terror, gore, violent, and gruesome. Those words are in the reviews. People like me who review horror make sure we use the right words to describe. It might look obvious on the screen right now, but when you're going to look at those reviews as you're working, it's harder. So last year, myself and my book list editor, Susan McGuire, did a wonderful piece about the scare levels in horror, and that's free. And we actually broke it down to 4 or 5 levels. And we did a narrative. And what I love about this is Susan is my editor. I love Susan. She's my favorite editor I have. She is a total scaredy cat. We talk about this in the article. She's a total scaredy cat, but she loves editing my reviews because she learns about all the books she's never going to read. So using reviews is a huge resource, right? But we really worked on this. We spent like 3 or 4 hours, doing this list and the descriptions and the books. You can use this right away to build a display. And it has a narrative explaining what those levels of books would make you do or feel. Oops, I forgot to put my video back on. Okay. Okay, possible limiters you need to think about, especially this time of year when people are coming in and want horror who don't normally read it. You want to make sure that you're thinking about the limiters. It's going to have supernatural monsters or speculative elements. Again, you need to say this to people because they sometimes don't know. They think it's going to be serial killer. Look, there also could be graphic violence, strong language, and sex, because we're trying to make you uncomfortable. So think about Stephen King, right? He's a best-selling author across the world with readers who don't consider themselves like horror. He has all those things in his books. This is what I need to let you know, because some of you haven't read horror in a while. The main character doesn't always make it. Sometimes none of the main characters make it. This is important to know and could be a limiter for people. Again, it might sound obvious, but awful and uncomfortable things happen. One of the most popular, one of the best horror books of the past couple of years is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. There is a horrible, awful death of a dog in this book, but it's there for a reason, right? It's really uncomfortable. So I think it's important to know. Also, horror tends to have open endings. They're generally resolved. You know what happens, right? You get a sense of closure, but the horror usually keeps going in some way. That's also a limiter for people that you might not think about, right? And that's there to keep the fear to follow you off the page. Okay, real quick with some authors. I'm just going to give you these quickly so we can get through them. You can go back and click on the links to read more about each author, but I want to give you a sense of the state of horror right now and quickly the trends so that you can have them, so we can leave more time for questions. And so you can go back, you're going to get these slides, so don't worry. So in my book, I talk about the new heads of horror. These are the authors in the driver's seat right now, steering the genre into the future. And by the way, you're going to leave this with like 24 authors you need to know right now. So Paul Tremblay, Carmen Maria Machado, Stephen Graham Jones, and Victor Laval. Again, these are books you should have. These are award-winning books. I do Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones because that is the best book to introduce readers who, it's probably his book that's the least scary, and The Only Good Indians everybody knows about. So The Old Guard, and this is updated from my last time I did this. Again, you don't need to think about King and Kuntz and Rice, and I have to take Straub out because he just died. Patrons don't need your help with those. These are the people carrying the mantle right now. And those of you who have my book, I go into a lot more detail about why and how they carry the mantle. But these are considered and we talked about, those of you who were here early, we talked about Christopher Golden, the sort of carrying the mantle and see themselves as the grandfathers and grandmothers of grandparents, I should say, because Caitlin Kiernan is non-binary, the grandparents of the genre. And that's who people look to for the different subgenres as well. They also are very, very good at lifting up new people and promoting them, which I love. On my blog, as the decade that ended with 2019 came to a close, I made a list of the top 20 of the last decade. And you can go and look there. It's in my book as well, but here's the full list. And if you click through up here, you will see so much more about the list. And then all of these link to reviews of the book, a lot of them that I wrote. So these are titles you should know. Again, these are authors you should know. They're not going to show up on another slide because they're here. You see Bird Box there at number 11. Okay, and then down the road. And it's funny because the Passage and The Shining Girls started the genre. And I think it's really important to come down and see this. And we have Grady Hendrix and Stephen Graham Jones again, and Paul Tremblay, Carmen Machado, a lot of the authors you already knew and saw. These are the authors you need to know. All 4 of my top authors, the new guard, the new kings of horror are on there. I will tell you, I love talking about The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. I know we already talked about him, but I just got to tell you, because the hardcover came out yesterday. This book is such an anomaly. It's so great. It's broken all the rules. It started as an ebook, then it's a novella, then it was published as a paperback, and yesterday it came out in hardcover. I mean, that's a book with staying power. Here are some more authors you need to know right now. They have not already been mentioned by name on the screen. So there's a reason that they're on this slide. Some of them are brand new voices you need to know. Eugene Bacon is one I really think you need to start seeing and knowing. Again, a range of scares as well. Okay, horror resources are here on the screen. Konrad's going to talk a lot more about horror resources, but all of these things link. So you can get access to all my reviews through my Goodreads. They're the draft versions. There's the Novelist Library Reads Crash Course, which is getting older. Konrad's going to talk to you a lot more about the Horror Writers Association and what we do. But those are some links you can go to right away. I highly suggest the Bram Stoker Awards page. They have an entire we have an entire website for that. Again, Summer Scares will come up. Horror for Libraries is a great hashtag. And then my blog, RA for All Horror, both online and my book. The online has extra resources that were cut from the book, but also it has weekly reviews of books I'm giving away. They're books I reviewed, and I give them away. And it has resources like the trusted independent publishers and more resources on that page. So take a look at that. Now I'm going to go through a couple trends very quickly before Konrad talks to you. So one of the things I like to do every year, and I just did these are the current trends right now. So first of all, short scares, novellas, short stories, anthologies, and collections. I just did a brand new article for the lineup about 6 need-to-know anthologists, but stories are where it's at. The Horror Writers database is so good because we give awards for, graphic novel, novella, or they call it long fiction, right? Individual stories, collections, which collections are, just so you know what the terminology, because horror authors get upset if you get it wrong, because I used to. I should be like, they're all anthologies. No, anthologies are multiple authors in one book, and collection is one author. So just, know the terminology. And horror poetry is really popular. Don't sleep on it. Again, there are resources for all of these trends. This is more just to let you know what the trends are. I have everything for you, including representative books now for you to go take a look at. So when we talk about retellings, we're both retelling old stories like the Ballad of Black Tom, which retells the most racist H.P. Lovecraft story, but from the perspective of a Black man. It's wonderful. I like to describe it as he's both giving Lovecraft a hug and the middle finger all at the same time. But we're also taking established tropes and rethinking them a little bit too, which is kind of neat, and actually retelling old stories. So like, the daughter of Dr. Moreau, why did that get flipped backward? I will fix that later. I don't know why that happened. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia is a retelling, obviously, of H.G. Wells. Voice No Bird is a retelling of Snow White. But then, the Twisted Ones rethinks the tropes of this book, The White Ones, other things, just different ways to do it. Children of Chicago retells the Pied Piper story, etc. It is mostly now from marginalized point of view, because these were traditionally white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied stories, and they're told from a different perspective, all of them, which is really interesting. Know that you can find this by using Goodreads to crowdsource retellings. If you use that link, they're not all horror, but they are all retellings. This one was my fun one to throw in. Mushrooms. I cannot, when I get to my starter pack for 2022, you will see mushrooms are everywhere. I love this article about why horror is obsessed with mushrooms that just came out on Book Riot this past year. This is just a quote from that, right? They are things that appear in the darkness around damp things. There you go. The brand new story by T. Kingsolver, which I didn't put on here. It'll be on later. That's why. So we'll talk about it then. But this is a great collection, anthology by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, who also did Mexican Gothic, which also has mushrooms. These are some great stories where mushrooms play an important role. You can actually click on mushroom horror. You can do a search on Goodreads and find more. That's actually a list of the best mushroom horror, which was hilarious. Body horror still going strong. This focuses on graphic and psychologically disturbing mutilations of the human body. That's what it does. I have a great article that I think you should check out she wrote Salt Sea, Julia Armfield, I think her name is, on body horror and the female body, because it's a lot of women doing body horror. It's a lot of women talking about their bodies and, talking about bodies betraying them. And it's because women experience body horror just by being women, both against us, but also watching our bodies physically transform, literally going through menstruation. Some of us are parents. We've carried a little, thing inside of us. It's very interesting. I have multiple manifestations here of body horror. And I think it's the next step. I think it comes after zombies, right? Because zombie is a kind of body horror. This is a next step. You can look at more titles from Goodreads, but things have gotten worse since we last spoke, and Queen of Teeth would be last year's biggest body horror winners. And then this is an Ellen Datlow collection, which of course she's in my article about the best anthologists, because she is. Leading toward body horror, we can get even more extreme horror. And I really think this is a place where we need to talk about a big trend that needs to start being accepted in libraries. This is like when we added erotica to our libraries. Look, there are now awards with new books winning, new novellas, and also Lifetime Achievement Awards being given out. It used to be just written by men. It's now written by women. The first two books at the bottom are classics, The Girl Next Door and Exquisite Corpse by Poppy C. Bright. But then across the board, these are titles you should check out. I think there's another list from the lineup called Horror Books with Heart. They're extreme horror with heart. So I think you should check that out if you don't think it belongs there. But if you have erotica, you need extreme horror. And then world horror. Not all of these are in translation, but they are all with a non-West focus. And I think it's important. I just reviewed Swedish Cults, who is Sweden's Lovecraft, in Booklist like this week. It just posted on my blog yesterday. So I think that, and Tenders the Flesh is one of the biggest books. Pinata's Coming. Cass Caw, they are one of the best writers, especially of short fiction out there. I just read Cass Caw's new collection that's coming out in October, and it will get a star in Library Journal in the October issue. It is just fantastic. But these are Hex. There's a book I know you have. Frankenstein in Baghdad's part of our Summer Scares program. Don't sleep on non-Western focused horror. And I believe that is the end of my trends. And then before I pass it off to Konrad, I just want to say, I wanted to give you a starter pack. I do this every year. So these are 6 titles from 2022. And I tried to pick books. I did pick books, except for Ghost Eaters, which comes out in like 2 weeks. Only books that are out now. There's a big joke going around the Horror Writers Association because Stephen Graham Jones has won the Bram Stoker for Best Novel 2 years in a row. And I joked with everybody at StokerCon. I said, oh, now it's everybody's chance because Stephen doesn't have a novel coming out till February. But he did probably have the best novella of the year already with The Babysitter Lives. It's audio only. It is available on Overdrive. But I will say that I believe that the end of the year race is coming down to these first 2 titles. I've read these all. The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay and The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. I'm not going to spend time talking about them at length because each of those links goes to my review. But really quick, this is a rethinking. So these are all 5th trends. This is a rethinking of the memoir as also of it, and then the repositioning of traditional monsters of the vampire. The Devil Takes You Home is a political horror novel that also is extreme horror. What Moves the Dead is a retelling of Poe. The Fall of the House of Usher also has mushrooms. Reluctant Immortals is a retelling from a feminist perspective of Dracula and Jane Eyre. Ghost Eaters, a reimagining of the haunted house story and mushrooms. And The Ghost That Ate Us is one of my favorites of the year also. It's completely a it's a redone fictional true crime. It's so realistic. I wanted to call Daniel Krauss when I finished it to make sure he was okay. I used to work with him at Booklist and I know him. He lives near me. He's in my chapter for the horror writers. And I really was worried about his safety, even though I knew he was fine. And also a trend of going to small presses as well. He's a major best-selling author and he asked to put this one in a small press. So that is very quickly in like 37 minutes, what you need to know. So now I'm going to turn off my video and I'm going to invite Konrad.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Konrad Stump from the Springfield Greene County Library, and I am, of course, as mentioned, Becky's co-chair for the Horror Writers Association Library Committee. Becky is going to do the slides for me, so you will hear me say next slide occasionally, and we will discuss this. But today I'm going to talk about how to feature horror at your library, right? So this is going into sort of how to engage your patrons more with the genre. Some ways, we talked about at the beginning, how to test the water. So if you're, scared of sort of engaging with your patrons, just sort of passive ways to do that, book lists, book displays, and then more active ways to do that, right? Book clubs, and then you kind of build from there. Programs, you can do program series, and then we'll talk a bit about Summer Scares, which is the Horror Writers Association's summer reading program. And each year, the Springfield Greene County Library puts together the Summer Scares programming guide, which I'll show you some pages from. But that basically gives you all the tools you need to engage with the Summer Scares titles at your library. So let's start diving in. Next slide. So book displays are probably the easiest way for you to feature horror at your library. Very passive. You don't have to engage with patrons to do it. You don't have to have read the titles. And so, one way that I like to do this, first and foremost, is collection merchandising, whether you have a horror section or if you just have books that sort of fall into that in your general fiction, in fantasy and sci-fi. Merchandise your collection, because people want to see what is available. You want to put it face forward so that people will pick it up and take it home. So that's probably where I would start. And then I would move on to, like, if you have a staff picks shelf. If you don't have a staff pick shelf, you should create one. And this is something that you could also do virtually. We do ours on social media. So every Friday we do a staff pick. So that's a way that you could do that. And that can either get some of your favorite books out there, or just books that you're wanting to promote for whatever reason. So again, you don't have to necessarily have read them. You're just choosing to be invested in them. And, because it is a staff pick, your patrons will take your advice and trust your judgment on those. And so they will circulate more. And then the other way, of course, is you're already doing displays. So you just have to actively try to incorporate horror into all of your displays, right? Whatever that is. And so a couple ideas that I have for, displays that you can create that are sort of horror adjacent, but allows you to incorporate books that are not horror, would be Thrills and Chills and Myths and Monsters. So, right, you're going in fantasy, you're going into some thriller and psychological horror. And so, it doesn't have to all be the horror genre. It can be stuff that sort of falls next to it. But that's just a way that you can, one, get more people to pick up horror who might not otherwise, because if you put the word on there, it might, deter some people. But if you say Thrills and Chills or Myths and Monsters, they might, pick up something that they wouldn't have otherwise. So always a good idea to sort of make it as inclusive as possible as far as what books you can choose to put in a display. So next slide. And then, of course, book lists, right? We should all be creating book lists for our patrons, whether, again, online, through books and authors blogs, through the New at the Library, or just, print book lists that you create. So here are a couple examples of ones that we've done. So, right, you can do a subgenre. On the one side, we have the haunted house novel. We did this in conjunction with a visit from Jennifer McMahon, who I'll talk about some more. And so you can focus on one aspect of the genre and, different titles that fall into that. You can do read-alikes. We have a Bird Box read-alike. And that allows you to focus on something that's maybe topical and really popular at the moment. You can say, hey, a lot of people are talking about this. Let's create a book list. And that'll just get more people checking out titles. And, something that you should do with all of your book lists is make sure that you are featuring diverse authors. And so, especially on these book lists, I think we've tried to incorporate a good variety, the haunted house novels, especially, just different types of authors, making sure that it's an even amount. So, and, we've also done Lovecraft Reimagined when we had Victor Laval in 2020. And we've done a few other book lists, but they're fun, they're visual, and that's what people want. And so, you should be creating them. So, next slide. Okay, book club. So this is when you've you've tested the waters, you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with the horror genre, and you're just like, you know what, I want to start jumping in. So the most important thing to remember, to me, with whatever you are doing, is that there are horror fans in your community. They exist, they are out there, and they need, your help, your resources to, experience the genre that they love. So, I started with the Springfield Greene County Library back in 2013. And then in 2015, I thought, I really love the horror genre. There have to be other people in the community who also love the horror genre. Let's start a book club. So I started this book club called Donuts and Death. And I had it set at a donut shop in downtown Springfield that was right near a college campus. So that way we might attract, a younger college-age crowd, some of those emerging adults that we find it hard to attract at the libraries, right? And that would be one piece of advice that I would have is, partner with an offsite location for your book club, just because it makes it more exciting. People aren't coming to a windowless room with people that they don't know, because we're generally awkward people probably as library workers, and our patrons are also often sometimes awkward people. So do it somewhere out in the community, and then that sort of is some outreach, and it provides it allows the organization that you're partnering with to also promote your events. So it just builds more buzz for your book club. It makes it more approachable. So one thing about featuring horror through your book club is that you don't have to have a book club that is solely dedicated to the horror genre. You can just actively work to incorporate horror into a book club that you are already doing. Even if you're doing a classics book club, do Dracula, do The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. So there are, ways that you can do that, even if it is not solely about the horror genre. And maybe choose one every quarter, choose 2 a year, just something to get your patrons, your book club engaged with that genre and sort of expanding their reading horizons. So a couple pieces of advice. As I already said, I suggest you go off site. But one thing that's very important to remember about book clubs is that they take time. So I think the first month of Donuts and Death, nobody was there, not one person. And then the next month there was one person, and then that same one person the following month. And then the month after that, there were 5 people, and it continued to grow from there. And, at its height before the COVID pandemic started, we would have, 10 to 13 people every month for this book club. And it was one of our most popular book clubs. So you have to give it time. And I would suggest, giving it a full year, right? You want to give it a few cycles to kind of get its feet and get going, or see if, it was a complete bomb, which is also okay. I have definitely done book clubs where they ended after a year, and that's totally fine. You just try something different. And the piece of advice for everything that I really want to stress to people is you have to document your experiences programming at the library, and you have to share them. So take pictures. If you have a library newsletter, you want to make sure that you send the pictures along for that. Do a little write up. If you are worried about being too self-promotional, it is totally okay to ask someone who was at one of your events to write something nice about it, and then you can share that. So because if my thing is, if you don't document and share it, then nobody necessarily knows that it happened. And if you're looking to get more support behind whatever your endeavor is, you're going to need that documentation and those anecdotes to gain more support. So one thing that I really like, especially about Donuts and Death and being involved with the Horror Writers Association, is that book clubs help support authors, and they can help build awareness for your library, right? So one thing is that if you're ordering books for your book club, you're probably ordering 6 titles, let's say, of a book. So that is 6 more titles the author or the publisher is selling that they might not have otherwise. It's getting more copies into your library, which just allows you to do more things with it. And then, I have done a lot of sharing our books and our programming on social media. So that kind of gets the awareness of the authors, and that gets the awareness of the publishers. So that builds awareness for your library, but also it's nice to see authors seeing their books in libraries and to hear the stories about how important libraries were to their lives. And so it's a great way to engage. So if you kind of create the content by documenting it and sharing it, then it just makes for a fuller experience. So next slide. Okay, so Becky had her starter list for 2022, and I wanted to feature one of those titles just in case you're worried about, how do you convince your library or your book club to support a horror title. I think What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher is a great example of something that's probably an easier sell than some other titles. So, it was a Library Reads top pick for July of 2022. So other libraries are already behind this. It was a USA Today bestseller. So that patrons and people in the public are buying it themselves, It's selling outside of the library. it's a reimagining of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. So people already have a frame of reference for the story. So they can easily mentally digest it and get behind it and might be interested in exploring that reimagining more. It's also under 200 pages. So, you know, it's a great book club title because it won't take super long for people to read. And you know, if you go above 400 pages, it's hard to sell your book club on that a lot of the time, but you can still do it. It's just 200, 300 pages is my sweet spot for a book club book. And then it's not in paperback yet, but it is under $20. So it's affordable for your library to buy multiple copies of it. So this would be just one 2022 title that is, I think, an easy sell for libraries and for library patrons. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to build a series. And so we'll talk about in sort of components, right? If you are interested in sort of just doing some one-off programs, or if you're working towards building a series, we'll go over all of that. But so each year, the Springfield-Greene County Library puts on an annual October program series called Oh the Horror. So I started this in 2017 with our adult programming coordinator, Katie Hopkins. And so I'll talk a little bit about sort of, you know, convincing your library to do this. You have to, you know who's in your system and who you can get support from, and sort of, you know, working on those relationships is important. But I went to Katie Hopkins and I was like, I really want to do this thing. I created a PowerPoint presentation of potential programs that we could do, of like different crafts, different displays. And, you know, she got behind that and we put on this event, and it went super well the first year. We were very lucky. But so doing a program series, to me, there are 4 programs that make a series. And once you have 4, you can kind of build it out from there to create more, a well-rounded series, but also to create more space if you have a program publication. So we have a quarterly program publication magazine called Bookends. And so it's all about getting that full page or 2 of Bookends real estate. So 4 programs will get you a page, basically, is what I found. So you have to have your capstone event. This could be your author event. So just your main thing, whatever that is. And then 2 really easy programs that you can do to fill out a series are trivia. You know, people love it. It's always going to be popular. And you can do a movie screening. It's easy. You just pay the licensing fee, and you know, people will show up and watch it. So those 2 are very easy. And then, of course, local history is something that every town is going to have. And so you can work with local history staff, your local history person. You can research stuff yourself, work with community partners to put on a local history program. So that kind of is the cornerstone of creating your series. And then to round it out, you would work with book group leaders and try to get them to feature whatever book your capstone event is. And then you also probably have display space in your building and across your district, right? So how do you utilize that? How do you work with local artists to get their work visual and in front of people so that you create more awareness of your series? All right, so next slide. So like I said, we'll kind of work a little bit backwards on this. Local history to me is the easiest place to start. And part of that might be because I work in local history. So I'm biased toward it. But every single town, no matter where you are, has ghost stories, it has folklore, it has true crime, and it has weird tales, just stuff that's sort of offbeat or macabre. And so those are all, you know, great programs that people will come see. So local history programs are some of our most popular programs in general. And I can tell you that people love spooky stuff from experience. So you can also do some horror adjacent local history programming. So you could do thrilling tales. You could do notable and notorious. I've done a notable and notorious Greene County Women Cemetery Walk. So that's kind of, you know, adds that macabre element that's not necessarily horror, but you know, being in cemeteries is a little bit horror adjacent to some people. You can also do weird and wondrous. So these are just a few slides from patrons that from programs that we've had. So in 2017, we partnered with a paranormal research society called 417 Paranormal Research Society to do an after-hours guided tour of our oldest branch, our Midtown Carnegie Library. And so, you know, they came, they did like a reading of it. It was all in the dark and people loved it. And then we also have a woman who does local history. And so she's done Ozarks Urban Legends and Superstitions. She's done like Monsters of Missouri. She's done like murders and mayhem kind of programs. And so there's always stuff there. And then, you know, Campfire Tales is a great program because, you know, it's just kind of scary, spooky stories. And you can either do it at one of your branches with like a virtual campfire video on the screen, or you can partner with a local park and park, you know, organization, the people who work there, and do it out in the park. And I'll, I think, show a picture from that. The other thing that's very nice about local history is that a lot of times the information is available. So on 2 different occasions, we've had authors who did local history books who weren't going to be able to make it. And so instead of canceling the programs, I just looked stuff up on like newspapers.com, you know, different online resources to kind of create that presentation myself and gave it, which was crazy, but also went well. And those programs had good turnouts. And so, you know, it's an easy enough thing for your local history person, your local history staff to kind of look some things up and share what they found. And that's how I always approach local history. You know, there are a couple things that I would say I'm an expert on, but for the most part, I'm just reading stuff and sharing with patrons what I've learned from reading about it. And, you know, that's totally okay. They will love it, regardless of if you're an expert or if you're just sharing stories with them. So next slide. Okay, so here are a couple of examples of super popular local history programs. So on the bottom is the woman I mentioned, Caitlin McConnell. In 2019, she did Monsters of the Ozarks, and this had, you know, I think 110 people at it. So people love monsters. And then the same year we had cryptozoologist Lyle Blackburn, and that had 134 people who came out for that. So like the audience is out there. People love spooky stuff. They love monsters. They especially love monsters that are supposed to be in their community. So never doubt that like there's not an audience for this. There really, really is. So next slide. Okay, so here are a few more. In the top left corner is the Haunted Route 66 Travelogue. This was one of the presentations where the person did not show up, and I was just like, I guess I'll put this together today. And then, you know, in the bottom is one of our cemetery walks that we did. Those are always very popular. They always fill up fast. So even like non-horror adjacent, you should do cemetery walks because they're fun. People love them. They will fill up. And then I mentioned the Ozarkian Campfire Tales, which is on the bottom too. We partnered with people from a local publication called Feral, the Journal of Ozarkian Gothic, and we partnered with Ritter Springs Park through the park board and did a haunted campfire tales where we had s'mores. You know, there was sort of some live music component to it, and just at dusk. And so it was very cool. The other thing that's great about local history, also in the top, is it gives your staff sort of area to shine. So we had a couple staff who were interested in spooky things and wanted to do this Haunted Libraries of the Midwest program. And so we said, yeah, sure, that would be, you know, a great addition to the series. And so, you know, they put that on. I think there were 45 people there. And so it just gave them a chance to share something that they love. It gave them a chance to present in front of people that they might not have had before. So just local history lets people explore their interests, and it's always very popular. So, next slide. Okay, movie screenings. I love doing movie screenings. We do one every year for O the Horror. So there are a few things. You should, of course, partner with someone in the community. You could have it at your branch, but I think it'll be more successful if you partner with a local theater. So every year we partner with the Moxie, which is you know, a small theater, and it allows us to promote them. It allows them to promote us. So it's a good relationship to have. You basically pay a licensing fee. I think we pay $200, maybe $250 for a movie generally. And some of that might be going up right now, but like it's a generally affordable program to put on. My key thing with choosing a movie for a movie screening is that you have to pick a movie that people want to watch. You know, we did Station 11 for our community read a few years ago, and we showed like the 2012 version of King Lear, and I don't know that anyone came to it. And that makes sense because no one wanted to watch it in the first place, unless you love it, I'm sorry. But so to me, nostalgia is key, right? You want to choose a title that was really popular, that has gained a cult following, and that people maybe didn't get to see on the big screen when it came out. So these are just some examples of what we've done. So the first year we did The Exorcist, then we did Silence of the Lambs, then we did Poltergeist. Last year we did Scream. And this year we were doing Young Frankenstein. But each year, these have probably at least 70 to 80 people that show up for these screenings, which is great. So, make sure that you're choosing something that is going to appeal to your patrons for those reasons, right? Nostalgia, didn't get to see it in the theaters, would still want to see it on the big screen. But those are always very popular. In the picture above, so the first year of Oh the Horror, we had a guy come down from St. Louis and talk about we had Grady Hendrix, who talked about My Best Friend's Exorcism. We had this guy, John Wade, I think his name is, who came from St. Louis to talk about the actual haunting that inspired The Exorcist. And then we showed The Exorcist at the Moxie. So I always like a theme for the series. We always have a theme each year for Oh the Horror. So that's just sort of a suggestion that I have, because it gives you a framework to work in. So you're not just thinking like, what do I do? You can say, oh, we're going to do myths and monsters. What falls into that? So having a theme is a great idea. Next slide. Okay, trivia. Yes, trivia also always super popular. So we've done a few different ones. We've done horror trivia at Missouri Spirits, which sadly they are gone. So we don't have a appropriately named venue to have these horror trivias in. But that was sort of a more general horror trivia. We did Monsters of Trivia, which was more monsters theme. We did Flights and Frights as a foundation event, and it was one of our most successful foundation events. I think we raised $4,000 for the foundation. And we also had prizes as giveaways. We had a costume contest. So, it makes for a good foundation event. And it allows you to sort of have some fun with it and, do prizes and costumes. And then we also did a virtual trivia, which was still popular in 2020, called Cosmic Horror Trivia. It was all like reimagining H.P. Lovecraft inspired that year. So trivia is just a sure bet. Next slide. Okay, author events. Yes, I want to share some knowledge about doing author events from having done them for so many years. These are some images from when Jennifer McMahon visited in 2019. And Jennifer McMahon is wonderful, and she's wonderful for your patrons if they are scared of getting into spooky stories, because they're spooky, but they're not super overt all the time. And there's like a historical aspect, there's a generational stories, women's stories, so there's a lot of appeal in her books. And so that's a great place to start if you are sort of testing the waters of just the genre in general. So my suggestion is, if you can, connect directly with the author. This was an instance where we had contacted, I think, Jennifer's agent, and they said, oh, she isn't doing anything. And then I saw her at StokerCon, and she was like, oh no, I'd love to come to your library. And she came to the library. So always best to connect directly if you can. Now, when you're making the ask, what I always do is I try to highlight what's in it for the author besides money. I don't lead with that. I usually say, your program will be featured in our publication, which goes out to 10,000 people across the county. We'll promote it through, slides, through local media, and our collection services department will partner with our local Barnes & Noble to buy and sell books at your event. So sort of focusing on those other ways that they would be making money on it might endear you some more to let them not charge as much. So, and then I say, besides your availability, the only thing I need to know is, what would your fees look like? And let them respond to that and just see. And, if funding can be difficult for Oh the Horror, it took a few years to get funding beyond our general sort of programming budget. And you can always email, and I can kind of share more about that with you, because there's a lot to unpack there. But, if someone is outside of your budget, they're outside of your budget, and you just have to sort of recalibrate and look somewhere else, and that's okay. Local media is really important. Authors want to be connected with local media. It's a way to, get their faces out there. It's a way to promote their event. So if you have local media opportunities, please connect authors with them. And then of course, book sales. So, it depends how your library works, but we partner with Barnes and Noble. And so we purchase books from them. They allow us to kind of, sell back whatever books we don't sell at the event. But it's important to note that, because that's sort of where the authors will be getting some additional money. And then just impressions are important. So, it depends on what your funding looks like, and that hopefully gets better each year if you do a series. But, make sure that the hotel, it doesn't have to be the best hotel, but it is at least, clean and centrally located to some things so they can go out and about if they want to. If they want to be picked up from the airport, pick them up. If they want to go out to lunch, take them out to lunch. So we generally try to devote our day to the author visit and not make them do a lot of things themselves unless that's what they want. So just always making a good impression is key, because they will share that, and then that's important to getting them back at your library if you want them back. So next slide. Okay, so choosing your venue is also important. So it just depends on your community, on the author. So for the most part, we have events in our auditorium at the library center, but sometimes it makes sense to go off site, right? And so one thing that we always have with patrons is, we think that they don't want to drive downtown because parking is bad. I don't know how accurate that is, but it's something that we say. And so, we had Grady Hendrix in 2017. We had him back last year. And we knew from the previous experience that he drew a crowd. And it had been a few years, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to accommodate that size. So we partnered with local theater, the Galois, to host him. And this was a community partner that we had done a program with a couple of years ago called Ghosts of the Galois, which was a haunted ghost tour, which was super cool. So it just sort of, strengthened that relationship, but also just provided a different space to have this event. So you just have to know and kind of try to gauge what will the turnout be like if you're doing it in this area that is not your library. You also, kind of think about if an author is going to be there for 2 days, what can you do? So local media, again, is a great option for that. But one thing that we've done with Grady Hendrix both years is we had his main event sort of the first night that he was there, and I think maybe he wasn't leaving until later the following day. So that next morning we did a reservation only book club. So with the Donuts and Death book club leaders, and sort of marketed it that way, right? Like a more intimate conversation with the author. Getting to spend more time. And so both of those went over very well. So you just sort of have to package them differently if you're doing 2 events with the same author. So next slide. Okay, it's also important to look beyond numbers, because we can get really hung up on numbers in library land and our programs. And so the second year that we did Oh the Horror 2018 is a great example. We had Kia Wilson, who wrote We Eat Our Own. She was wonderful. We had a great conversation, but we had 16 people. It was like a super rainy night. It was, maybe there was something going on with the local college, and so there were other events in the community. And it just, initially it felt like a letdown because it wasn't the turnout that we wanted. But like I said, we had a great conversation. The people who came to it enjoyed it. And so they talked about that. So a couple suggestions are, look for anecdotes from the author, from the patrons who attend the events. That'll sort of help you present a better picture of it. And then literally frame pictures different, right? Because to me, I want to be at the back of the room and get a picture of the crowd. But this picture, right, it's close up. It doesn't look like there aren't a bunch of people there, but there aren't a bunch of people there. But it's, it's just making people look at it differently from the photos that you're taking. And then how do you present that to your library? If you're writing something, say, for the library's newsletter, if you are looking to get funding for the next year, right? So I wouldn't say, we had 16 people, I would say the series brought in 430 people, right? So just incorporate it into the entire series, and that will make it look better. And you don't have to focus on the low number, because no one has to know that. I mean, someone probably does, but not everyone has to know that. So just don't worry so much about numbers. Worry about the quality and the overall series if you were doing a series. So, next slide. Okay, yes, displays and book clubs. We love working with local artists for our horror series, right? So that lets us sort of, show more people their work, get their work out there. But we also have multiple branches throughout the system that have different 3D, 2D displays. And so, how can you sort of coordinate that to get the word out about your series? Because these are all presentation modes, right, for the programs that you are putting on. I mean, they're for the artists as well, but it makes more people aware of your program series. And so these are just a few. We did Wild Things of the Ozarks, where we have our graphic art associate created these illustrations. And so that gave him sort of a different avenue to explore his talents, and he really loved that. We partnered with local artist Chad Woody, who takes these like old flea market paintings and puts monsters into them. So we've displayed his art a few different years. And then we partnered with Scott Sauer up top, who does sort of different creatures, and he does 2D, he also does 3D. So in our 3D display case at the Library Center, we had his different little creature sculptures. So it's just a way to sort of, like I said, round out the series, get more real estate in your program's publication if you're worried that you're not going to get a full page. And it's another way to promote your event. And again, book clubs, coordinate with the book discussion leaders. If you're doing author through multiple book clubs, don't have every book club do the same book, have them do different titles by the same author. And then, never be shy. Always ask the people who are leading those book clubs to get some photos and some anecdotes, because again, those are things that will help you in the years to come get more support behind whatever your endeavors are, whether they're just one-off programs, book clubs, or entire series. So, next slide. So crafts and games are another avenue that you can go. We always try to do something. So back in 2020, there's that Lovecraft Reimagined book list I mentioned. We did a program in a bag, right? So that had like a craft, it had a puzzle, it had like a little tchotchke that we 3D printed, which was super cool. So, something different and fun for the patrons that they can take home with them. And then it also just gives you another display space, right? So one of our library workers created this lovely monster you see behind there. And so they also had books on the display. So it just kind of gives you some more options and more fun. And then last year, we created a Slasher in the Stacks mystery game. So with narrative illustrations, and that was really amazing. I think over 300 patrons participated in that. And, our staff got involved up top, and then we had prize baskets. And we're doing another one this year called the Sasquatch of Sequoia Park, because our theme this year is Miss the Monster. So, think about what you can do that's a little bit more just like pure fun. Next slide. Okay, so the most important part is that if you're interested in doing all these things, we have all the tools available for you through the Summer Scares program. So like I said, Springfield Green creates the Summer Scares programming guide each year. So, right, you see our wonderful cover. Each year it has a book list of the titles that you can literally just print out and put on a display. So, and that gives you 9 titles to work with. And then next slide. As you'll see, each of these titles has read-alikes. So that also allows you to build out your display. It's basically over 40 titles that you have to utilize for a display. Okay, so these are a couple of page samples from this past year. So they're making by Clay McLeod Chapman, and Beetle and the Hollow Bones by Eliza Lane, which is a middle grade title. So each of these titles gets some appeal factors. So we partner with novelists. So we have appeal titles and read-alikes that we work with on them. And then there are suggestions for book talking the book using those appeal factors. So this is something that you can use when doing RA with your patrons. If you're going to go on TV and talk about a title, you can utilize that. There are also reading group guides for your book clubs. So, and then there are also 4 sample programs, one of which is always an author event, right? And then there's usually a local history aspect. There might be a game aspect. There might be a movie screening. So, any book that you are looking at, right, there is a whole series that you could do around it. And so these are just some examples. And the important thing about Summer Scares is that, we're providing these tools, these lists for you to use at any time of the year, any year. So it's not just for the year that we're doing those titles. You can, potentially work with these authors, work with these books, for years to come. So just remember that, right? Like, we are here to help, and we can help connect you with these authors. So next slide. Yeah, and one great thing that we had this year, right? So there's always an article at the back of the book. So this year we asked Jika Sabat, who is our novelist partner, to write an article about, how she connects readers with the horror genre, some of her favorite things. And you can see some of their guides that they create down at the bottom. So Novelist has a ton of resources. We also created this wonderful list of new and upcoming titles by our Summer Scares authors and spokespeople. And so, that can help you with collection development, knowing what to order, knowing what's out there, and with what you might want to do for your book clubs going forward. So that's just a bit more about Summer Scares. And, there's much more. So feel free, of course, to reach out about that.
Thank you, Konrad. There's a lot there. And as Konrad said, you can definitely find that information you can follow his links and email libraries@horror.org. But I just want to wrap everything up before we take questions, and there will be at least 10 minutes for questions. We just want to remind you, I think both of us did a very good job showing, not just telling, but I'm going to tell. Horror is everywhere, right? People love it. They come. It's in all media. It's in all genres. It's in the news. It's in politics. Like, it's everywhere. So we want to capitalize on that all year long. Of course, right now is your best time to double down on it. In the chat, as Konrad was talking, I said, get those horror displays up like today, tomorrow, next week. We gave you all the books. We gave you all the resources. You don't have to do anything but put the books up. You can use our Summer Scares graphic. You can just, do whatever you want. But horror is an escape from a terrible reality. And we are seeing this horror renaissance right now because of that. There's been, think pieces written about it, but those of us doing it, like Konrad and I, have been seeing it building very steadily since before the pandemic. So we also want to see, though, think about the increased popularity in gentle reads, the Hallmark Channel, right? Cozy mysteries, all of romance. The NPR and the New York Times have both just done recent articles about, our favorite friend at libraries these days, Colleen Hoover, and all of her, why people love her so much. I did a recap of it on my blog as well. People want to experience horror this time of year. So that's why it's a good time to try it. They want to see what it's like. They're hearing about it. They know it's the spooky season. They want to try it out. So you're that trusted place where they know you're not going to overdo it on them, right? It's the library. The library can't possibly overdo it. And we could, obviously, just like we can we have erotica, but we're not going to. We're going to put their needs first. And horror programming is something you can do all year long. It's not just in October. October, by the way, is the hardest time to get people. Konrad starts planning the horror literally right after he finishes the horror, right?
Oh yeah, always.
I mean, yeah. And we found with Summer Scares that has become super popular, and we start doing that. Well, we have our first meeting next week with our new spokesperson who will be announcing on Halloween, but we announced the books in February. So we start, and Konrad, you get the guide done March 1st, right?
Yes, yeah. So start working on it late fall,
Yeah.
March 1st. So it's out there for people to use in time for their programming deadlines. I was just gonna say too, year round, wintertime, you can always do wintertime tales and, or like spooky holiday stuff. So there's always an opportunity to do horror programming year round.
And then my favorite is halfway to Halloween. I celebrate it every April. I mean, it's a great way to remind people. In my book, I talk about this at length and document it. So I'm just going to say it now because I prove it in my book. You can use the movie industry as an example. Horror movies don't only come out in the fall anymore. I mean, Nope is an obvious example, but Get Out came out in the winter. April's actually a very popular time for horror movies to come out over the last decade because it's a slower time at the movie theater and they've made gobs of money on it. I will, though, tell you there is still reluctance to use the H word, to say horror. A lot of publishers don't use it. They'll say like supernatural thriller, or they'll say literary horror. Please don't use the term literary horror. Stephen Graham Jones is not literary horror. He is horror that wins awards, outside of the horror genre. Yes, same with Paul Tremblay. When we put the word literary in front of it, we demean it and we take power from it. Just like if we did literary thriller, literary romance, don't do that. And then a reminder for part of this idea that horror is infiltrating, the biggest game changer for us in the last couple of years has been Tor Nightfire, their entire horror imprint. We featured books from that. What Moves the Dead is one of those books. So, we want to remind you that there is a major publisher, Tor, which is owned by Macmillan, doing an entire line that is just horror. So I want to just end with this quote, and then we're going to give you our contact information again and move on to questions. But I want to remind you of this. And someone mentioned they love Joe Hill. And this is a quote by Brian K. Vaughan, who does lots of very popular graphic novels. I think Why the Last Man and Paper Girls are both TV shows right now. And of course, Saga. But I think this is really important. This is a quote I keep with me all the time. And this is to help you understand why you're doing this, right? Because readers love fantasy, but we need horror. Smart horror, truthful horror, horror that helps us make sense of a cruelly senseless world. He wrote this in 2010, and unfortunately, he was very right. So how can we hold your hand? And you're going to have access to these slides, right? We're going to help you. You can email libraries@horror.org. You can find me on Twitter at RA for All. You can find Konrad on Twitter and on Instagram. And the Summer Scares program, we have a Twitter run by Carolyn Chesla, who's one of our committee members, who is a university librarian. So we even have academics involved. And then anywhere in this presentation where you saw the logo, you can click to get to the resource page with archive access. So that is the end of our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing if it lets me. And then if you would like to ask questions, we are here. Yes, so Stephanie talks about how she likes reading horror as an escape from terrible reality. You are not alone. So we are here to help you with anything that you want to know about helping your patrons. And now's a good time too, as we have a few minutes. You want to ask Konrad some of those nitty-gritty details. But I said
definitely.
this in the chat, right? Like, people don't understand. Konrad, yes, it's a large system, but he's in the middle of Missouri. Like, this is not, I'm in Chicago. This is not New York City. This is not Chicago. He's able to get this information and these people and these numbers in a place with probably a fraction of the population of, just small sections of New Jersey.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't have to be a large city. There's enough community, even just surrounding Springfield, that attracts people from the region. And especially if you're doing local history, a lot of it is regional. And so there's appeal for people who aren't your patrons. And we often have people come in from outside of the system to attend the program. So, don't think that your library system is too small for anything. It's more about, what you put out there, what you get out of it, what your patrons get out of it. So it's always about quality.
And I would say, and I know New Jersey a little bit, obviously better than Konrad, but things like, they have a graphic designer, fine. But in New Jersey, you have county libraries and you might not have access to a graphic designer always, but I do know there are great arts organizations. My aunt is on the board for the Hunterdon County Arts. I think it's called like the Arts Center. I used to do community service as a kid and my cousin got married there, her daughter, but like they have access. There are county resources in New Jersey with funding from arts programs where you might be able to find access to local artists. And one of the great things I know we did at my library, just outside of Chicago, the Berwyn Library, was when we had interesting things, we sometimes did contests for children, right? So you can even get children involved. So maybe you don't have like the Monsters of the Ozark from a fancy artist, but you might have children drawing Monsters of the Pine Barrens, right? There are ways to get the things incorporated into your libraries.
Yes, definitely.
And if there are any questions, put them in. I know you might be scared, but we're here to help. The other thing, Konrad, you talked about, you bring all these big authors. I put it in the chat, but I want to say it when you were talking. we have partnered with a lot of libraries. Any
Mhm.
author who's ever been on Summer Scares has sort of tacitly said they will appear at least virtually for free at any library anytime. They definitely will appear virtually for free while they are serving, but many of them, like Stephen Graham Jones and Alma Katsu and Clay McLeod Chapman, have continued to do that. One of our Summer Scares authors this year is the author of Scary Stories for Young Foxes.
Yeah.
He has already appeared at schools. He appeared at my school district at the end of the school year last year. He is hilarious. And again, you don't think this book's for you? It was a finalist for the Newbery Award. So you're wrong, because, I mean, the Newbery Committee thought it was worth it. And it's scary. Conrad, that's a
Oh
scary
yeah,
book.
I love that book. It was. Yeah, it was very enjoyable. So I'm so glad that I read it. And I also wanted to say that, right, like obviously Summer Scares is about the books, but it's also about, authors who are willing to work with libraries. So we're not, bringing in people who don't want to work with libraries. All these people have been so great. And, we are happy to work to connect you with anyone to at least explore the option of doing an in-person or a virtual program.
And that's a great point, Konrad. We make them sign an agreement that is not binding in any way, but we send them a letter that says, we have chosen you for Summer Scares. Here are the things we're going to expect from you. And we have had authors say, no, thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I would love to do this, but I have X happening in my life and I can't do this, which is why we always work to pick 3 titles in each area and a alternate title just in case. And we have gone to the alternate title more than once. So, and sometimes those alternate titles show up the next year, like the remaking was a alternate title, and then it showed up this year.
Yeah. And Clay has been amazing, and would be really wonderful for any library to have. Super engaging, super fun, and just his books are really like enjoyable, approachable. So love me some Clay McLeod Chapman.
He was also on the library reads list for September. So, and he's an indie next pick. That's another good point too. When we pick the Summer Scares title, we want to make sure that we get a range of scares in each category. So if we take the adult this year, Coyote Songs by Gabino Iglesias is graphic, but also beautiful, and it's very serious. It talks about social political issues on the border with Texas and Mexico, and it's violent. Whereas the remaking is still scary, but it's based on urban legends and local history. And it also has this great theme of a story within a story within a story that's like a Mobius strip. And it has a movie aspect, which people also love. And then we did My Favorite Thing is Monsters, which is a graphic novel, which is absolutely gorgeous, by Emil Ferris. And it actually was chosen because of this idea that people use horror to cope with the real horrors in their life. This is a book that actually shows that. It's about coping with the real horrors in your life. I'm also very proud that we got LGBTQ representation into our middle grade this year.
Yeah,
that was something
exciting.
We hadn't done. We were not afraid to do it, and we picked an award-winning book, and the response has been fantastic. My school library brought 2 copies, and it's it's a great book for.
It's really wonderful.
All you New Jersey people, it's got a mall in it. It's set in a mall.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky. And Konrad, this was great. I love the local history aspect too, Konrad.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's full of fun stuff.
It is. Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you both.